Good morning everyone. Myself Shailaja NS, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Government Engineering College, Musla Vasalli. In the previous sessions, we have discussed the different test cases. Continuation of the same, we are discussing the test cases. The next is in use case testing. In the use case testing, it is mainly focused on the interactions use case based testing. That is a very effective approach to a system testing. In the use case, it has to develop to identify the system interactions that can be used on the basis for a system testing. For each use case, it involves several system components that can be testing to use for the forces these interactions to occur. The sequence diagrams associated with the use case documents the components and interaction that are being tested. In the example, we have look into this. We have one client and an administrator. One administrator. In the client, he has a different credentials. He has first one. He can log in, or it can create an account, or he can view an account. In the view account, you can also view the history of the previous and also view the open orders he already had with relevant to the client. Then after all the order has been viewed, he can finally has just like a logout, he can close the account. Whereas the administrator, he can in between, it has the authentication to add the user and as well as the delete the user, and in between if you want to close, you can close the account. In the testing policies, we have exhaustive system testing. It's an impossible. Why? Because it's a define the required system to test a coverage may be developing. Then, for example, in the testing policies, we have consider all the system function that can be accessed through the menu based, that has to be tested. In the combination of the functions, we have the text formatting that are accessed through the same menu that must be tested, where user input provided all functions that must be tested with both the correct and incorrect input. Then test driven development. Test driven development is a very important approach. It's also known as a TDD approach. It's an approach for the program development in which to create a test before writing the code. Before writing the code, we need to create a test. To develop a code incrementally along with the test increment, don't move on to the next increment until the code that have been developed and pass it to the test. It has introduced a agile methods, the set of the software methods in which it has to go for any software requirement, for example, then and it has moved to the design and testing and as well as a enhancement. The same, it's a combination of them. The agile methods is also known as a plan driven development process. In the diagram, it has to show the different functionality to identify any new functions are come across. For those functions, we need to write the different test cases. After writing the test cases, you're supposed to run the test. Whenever after running the system, it can be checking for whether it is a works true or otherwise it is a fail. Then if it is fail, it has to implement the functionality and refactor it. Otherwise, it can pass to the once again. If it is true, it has passed to the beginning to identify new functionality. Then after it has been implementing the functionality, it has once again supposed to run the system. This it has once again we will discuss this. We have to start identify those increment of those functionality that is required for testing. This should be normally a small and implemented in the several few lines of codes. Then write a test for this functionality and implement this as an automated test. After that, you're supposed to run the system. Then all the test has been implemented initially and not implemented, so the new test will be fail. Then implement in the functionality and rerun the test. Once all the tests run successfully, move on to implementing the next chunk of functionality. As usual, if your test is completed run successfully, then only we move for a implementing and preparing for a chunk of functionality. Which are all the benefits that has come across in the TDD, right? It is what we have a once you are writing the program, you are supposed to write in it's known as a code code coverage, whereas every code segment has to write at least one associated test. So all the code that has written at least one test, it has to at least follows the one test has to be true. Then next we'll move on to the regression testing. Regression testing is nothing but it is developed for a incrementally as a program to develop. It can run regression test to check the changes to the program that have not introduced any new bugs. Once you will execute in the program, it has to identify it cannot occur any new bugs in the program. Next is in simplified debugging. We have a very simple way of debugging the program. When the test fails, it should be obvious where the problem lies to the newly written code that has to be checked and modified. After all the debugging is over, next we'll prepare for the documentation. That is nothing but a system documentation. That is the test themselves are the form of a documents that has to be described. In detail, we are discussing the regression testing. It is the testing of a system that can make changes that cannot be broken. It cannot be broken earlier. In the previous working code, we have to the changes has to be checking that any changes has been made. Even for the changes has been made that is not broken in the previous working code, then that can be conducted either manually. You can conduct manually or it can be conducted automatically. Then if it is conducted manually, it makes a expensive. Expensive means it takes a time and as well as the training purpose it needs. It can be managed in terms of a automatic regression testing. It's a very simple and as well as a straightforward. Whereas in all the tests that are run, every time a change is made to a program. Any changes has been made to the program that can be run at any time. The testers that must run successfully before the changing is committed. A test has to be run before any changes has been made. Then next is a release testing. It's a process of testing a particular release of a system. Primarily it can use for a supplier of a system that is good enough for the release. That it has been used for releasing any new product. Release testing has to identify how the system delivers site specified the functionality, performance and dependability, and also it does not fail during the normal use. It's not supposed to fail during the normal use. It's usually a black box testing. A black box testing where the tests are derived only from the system specification. It has that black box testing has to be conducted only during the system specification. Next is in the release testing and a combination with the system testing. The forms of release testing, it's mainly based on two different types. One is a requirement based testing, second one is in scenario based testing. Whereas first we'll discuss the requirement based testing, that is a release testing from a form of a system testing. It has some important differences. The first difference is in a separate team that has not has been involved in the system development should be responsible for release testing. The people, they are not in a scene of a, what is that? We can have the system development. Okay, that people can be chosen for that team group of people will be chosen for a release testing. Then system to be tested by the development team who has developed the software, that has to be focused mainly on the discovering the bugs in the system. Bugs means we have a defects in the system. The objective of a release testing is a check the system meets its requirement and is good for a external use. That is also known as a validation testing. After requirement testing, we have a scenario testing. Scenario. What do you mean by scenario? Scenario is a story that describes the one way in which the system might be used. And also it has to be realistic. Always the scenario should be a realistic. It's an approach to release this testing where to devise a typical scenarios that use the development test cases for the system. Next is an performance testing. What is the performance? If you are designing any product, how it is working? What is the performance of it? How you are checking how it operates, right? The performance testing is the test that emergent the properties of a system such as a performance and as well as a reliability. How much reliable? If it is fails, how it can be recovered from the existing problems. Then we have the test should be reflect the profile of use of the system. Then in the performance testing, it involves the planning a series of tests. Planning is nothing but a series of tests where the load is steadily increased until the system performance become unacceptable. In the performance testing is in stress testing. Is a form of a performance testing where it's deliberated by the overloaded to the user to the test from a failure behavior. Next is an user testing. User is nothing but the customer. Actually, the clients. That is how you are conduct the test cases. Is a stage in the testing process in which the user are nothing but the customer. They provide an input and advice on the system testing. They provide a set of inputs. Yes, this is what the system has to work. In the user testing is essential. It's a very essential process in the comprehensive system and release testing that have been carried out. The reason for this, the influence from the user working environment, it has a major effect on the reliability, performance, usability and robustness of a system. Reliable, if even it is fails, it can recover from the existing ones. The performance it has to be good and usable to the customers, and it has to be robustness for the system, and it cannot be replicated in the testing environment. Then in the types of user testing, we have different types of testing. The first one is an alpha testing, second one is an beta testing, then is an acceptance testing, right? Then we'll discuss the first one is an alpha testing. Alpha testing is nothing but user of the software to work with the development team to test the software at the developer side. The alpha testing has to be conducted at the developer side. Then beta testing. Beta testing is a release of the software is made available to users to allow them for an experiment. It allows the user to conduct an experiment, and if they also has to raise the problem, if they raise the problem, also discover with the system, they have to discover with the system developers. Okay, next is an acceptance testing. In the acceptance testing, the customer has to test a system to decide whether or not it is ready to accept it from the system developers and deployed in the customer environment. It has to be accepted by the user. That's why it's known as a acceptance testing. Its primary focus on the custom of a system. Okay, from this session, I'll conclude for the types of user testing. Thank you.